All right, here we are, chapter 36, talking about, let's see here, talking about nationalism and political identities in Africa, Asia, and Latin America. We're on the third heading, which is focusing on Latin America, and we're working on the second subheading, which is the evolution of economic imperialism. So it's important to note that obviously Latin America was used to basically economic domination by foreign powers. They were used to it obviously originally from Spain and Portugal primarily, also from Great Britain. And what's going to change here is the U.S. is asserting itself more. It's asserting itself more on the world stage, and definitely also asserting themselves more in the Americas. So what's going to happen is during this time period, the U.S. is really going to replace. What's going to happen is they're really going to replace where Great Britain had been, and we're going to have a jump in U.S. investments. So the U.S. investments from 24 to 29 during the Roaring Twenties went from 1.5 billion to 3.5, and a lot of that went to, of course, trying to take over natural resource industries so they can get those natural resources and raw materials into other things that they can make more money off of. The U.S. strategy during this time is called dollar diplomacy, and there's a few presidents that you would associate with that, but one of which we often talk about is Taft. And so Taft, in his final address in 1912, said that the U.S. should substitute dollars for bullets in its foreign policy. So the idea is that they could continue doing like the Monroe Doctrine or what Teddy Roosevelt had done with his Roosevelt Corollary, in that really trying to assert the U.S. militarily in this area to protect investments. And the other way to do it was to just develop the foreign markets through peaceful commerce, through investments, and so on and so forth. So what's going to happen is this is called dollar diplomacy, or from the Latin American side, perceived as Yankee imperialism. So the Great Depression, just like the rest of the world, creates huge issues in Latin America. In their case, primarily because they're export oriented. And so once the market goes, then their economy goes, and with very little recourse on anything to do. So the Great Depression is going to halt 50 years of economic growth in Latin America, and it's going to make things incredibly difficult for them. Just to see how busy the United States had been in this area, we have the gold here essentially is U.S. possessions, and then look at that pinkish peach color. You can see all the places where the U.S. had supported troops or revolutions or so on and so forth. All right. So what ended up happening is, like I mentioned, because Latin American states, since they were so focused on exports, once those markets have issues, then they have huge issues. So your book decides to focus a lot on what happened in Brazil. So Brazil tried some very drastic measures to try to buoy the price of their products, and it's not going to go well at all. So a lot of Latin American countries kind of search for what they can do. And again, like I mentioned, the one that your book focuses on most is Brazil, where Vargas, who's the president, well, dictator president really, is going to turn the nation into an Estado Novo, which is new state. Hopefully I pronounced that right. My apologies if I didn't. And so what is interesting is he's going to be able to rule with the military, but not with the landowning elite. So what is going to happen is he's going to try to do a lot of industrialization. He's going to try to create new enterprises, key of which would be iron and steel, which again is incredibly important. If you can produce iron and steel, then you can produce those things which are crucial to the infrastructure you want to build, to the machines you want to build. And so those will be very important. He's also going to try to implement protectionist policies, which basically makes it more expensive for people to do business in your country. So you can, whether it's exports, so it's harder to export things to the country, and or other governmental means. And so what's going to happen is he's also going to try to increase the social welfare. So trying to make sure there's safety and health regulations, minimum wage, limits of hours, all of those things. So although he's going to try, Latin America is going to have a lot of issues throughout this time period. See you in the next video.